What's up guys, JayzTwoCents here, and the summer months are quickly approaching. Some of you are just now starting to thaw out, but us over here in California are already starting to smoke out, I guess. That sounds wrong, right? Yo dude, what are you doing?
Shopping for a case for my new build.
What are you looking for?
I want something designed for water cooling.
Fractal design, define S all the way. Check it out. Plenty of airflow, plenty of open interior for water cooling, radiator support. It even has mounts for your reservoirs.
I don't have enough room for my hard drives.
Okay. Fractal design R5. Look at all those hard drive cages, and you can fit your radiators and water cooling in here.
No, I got a lot of hard drives, but I also have an EATX motherboard.
Okay, I'm gonna try something here.
Okay.
Bear with me. You might wanna stand clear. Never actually tried this before. Okay. It worked. Fractal design, define R6. You can fit all your radiators, a crap ton of hard drives, and it fits EATX.
Dude, this is perfect.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
So as I was trying to say, it is starting to get hot in plenty of parts of the world, so we're gonna start taking a look at some AIO coolers, some more water cooling content, and first up on the chopping block is Enermax's new LIQFUSION, which is an RGB take on their AIO. What I've always liked about Enermax is the fact that they don't just go with the Asetek rebranded stuff, they design everything in-house. So we're gonna take a look at this one today. We're gonna slap it on our 8700K, and we are going to see how well this thing can actually handle the heat. Otherwise, it'll have to get out of the kitchen or something like that. Now, obviously, the LIQ stands for liquid. They've always called their AIOs LIQTech or LIQFUSION or LIQ whatever, but the Fusion is obviously the RGB, and as you can tell by looking at the box, they spared no RGB on this guy. But we've also got a flow indicator. So what makes this one a little bit different is the pump is actually inline on the tube, and the block is just a flow indicator and a block. So rather than having the pump crammed into the block, it is separate. So I've never actually seen that yet on an AIO, so that's gonna be interesting to take a look at. You get a lot of stuff that comes with it though. You get here's like, this is some sort of a jumper. Interesting. So it is a jumper. And I guess the reason why they do that is, and we'll look at this in a second here, they actually provide you extra coolant so that you can top it off if you need to. So it is technically a serviceable piece. In fact, here is that 100 milliliters of coolant right here, which of course has your anti-corrosive additives and all of that stuff. It says avoid direct sunshine exposure. So this is our RGB header right here. We've got a fan splitter for our fans. I guess an extension cable for our fans. A SATA power cable. Everything is detachable from this, which is kind of neat. We've got our brackets, of course, because this does support basically every socket from LGA 775 and up, with the exception of TR4. It does not support Threadripper, so keep that in mind. We have got our RGB control module, our thermal paste, our brackets, our screws. We've got two RGB fans right here from Enermax, and I've always felt like Enermax goes above and beyond in terms of their fan quality. They are a lot better than you would typically find in just your run-of-the-mill AIO. Static pressure optimized. You can tell by the swoop of the blade, the number of blades, the density of where the blades actually, how close together they are. The closer together the blades are, the more static pressure you have, because there's nowhere in between the blades for the fan air to escape. So high pressure, of course. And then here is obviously the entire purpose of this video, the AIO. This little dial right here appears to be some sort of a purge valve, so that's kind of neat, right? You can purge the system of air. So here is our flow indicator / block combo. This is also RGB lit. So that's kind of neat. You're gonna see this thing spinning as it's going, so you always have that visual indicator that your AIO is running. That's always a concern of people with AIOs is, did it die and you didn't know until your computer shut off? Well, you're gonna know, because this little wheel is gonna spin and tell you that. This is a sort of questionable move though. Putting the pump in line like this, I can see where that makes sense, but it's not aesthetically that pleasing. With it being in line like this, it does sort of kind of get in the view. I mean, and depending on where you've got this sort of arranged, it's questionable about whether or not it's going to even be aesthetically displeasing to your build. So I guess that's gonna be up to you in your case. But that's pretty much everything you get in the box. So let's go ahead and install it on our 8700K and see how well it does. So here's the LIQFUSION all set up. I wanna start off with something. You might notice there's no RGB showing on the pump. We actually killed that RGB because we plugged it into the motherboard until we realized it's addressable 5 volt and not an actual 12 volt RGB on this system. And it's not mentioned until page 15 of the manual regarding that. So it's an important thing to point out that you need to make sure if you're gonna be plugging in directly to your motherboard, which it does support, it has to be a 5 volt addressable RGB, something like the NZXT motherboard with CAM would support that. The Asus boards has all 12 volts, so we fried the RGB on our pump. We did have it running with our controller first, which we wanted to test, and it looked great. Unfortunately, we tried to sync it with the motherboard and killed it. But at least you can see with the fans how that looks. That's totally on us, but I just wanted to put that out there in case you're considering getting one of these. That's something you definitely need to keep in mind. But here's what the controller looks like. It's pretty neat. So you use the up arrow and down arrow to just cycle through the different modes. And then if you want to speed up the effect, let me get to like a changing effect here. There, like this one, which has kind of a marquee, sort of a color change. If you push the M button, the LED turns red, and then you can speed it up, or you can slow down the effect. So you can control this via this little control box if you don't have a motherboard that supports adjustable RGB. But what about cooling, right? RGB is a cool thing, but cooling is obviously what matters most. We've been running our test here on OCCT off and on. We've been 4 minutes on this test, and it looks like our max CPU temperature has hit 82, and we are overclocked to 4.7 gigahertz on all cores. So it's not as far of an overclock as a 8700K could go, but it is an 8700K that has not been delitted, so we are talking about a hot CPU. We are sitting anywhere from the upper 60s to the low mid 70s with a couple of cores hitting the 80s. Again, characteristic of an 8700K, but far from our TJ Max of 105 Celsius. So yeah, it's definitely doing the job. The fans are adjustable both through PWM, which we do have it connected to a PWM on this motherboard, from 500 RPM to 2000 RPM. So the temperatures you're getting right now are based on the fans completely maxed out, and the pump is completely maxed as well. One thing worth pointing out though, the flow indicator on this moves very, very slowly. So if you're expecting it to see it just turning away like a crazy looking pinwheel like you see on closed or open loops, on custom loops, that's not what you're getting on this, because some of the fluid does bypass the little flow indicator. So even when it's running extremely low RPMs on the pump, the indicator does not move very fast at all. This kind of looks more like a carousel than it does a flow indicator, but it's a nice visual reference. If you have a window on your case, you can look in and see that your pump is indeed running, as long as it's running 100%. As soon as you slow it down, then it definitely doesn't give you as much of the effect. But it's a nice bonus. It's not something I would rely on. I would definitely set up warnings in your BIOS if your temperatures go above a certain degree. That way, if your pump was to die, then you would definitely know. Now let's talk about the serviceable aspect of this pump real quick, or this unit. It is technically serviceable. It has a port on the side that you can, and it has a sticker on there too telling you where to go in the manual to learn more about it. You can add more fluid to this if you need to. Typically an AIO like this does not require service and does not need to be opened up. This has a bleed port on the radiator, making it easy to get the air out. I'm just not entirely sure why that's necessary. Most AIOs are not going to require any sort of service. So I don't know why that's an option. I've never had one evaporate on me because they're sealed to the point to where their evaporation isn't really it's not something you deal with. I think they just might be trying to appease to maybe the enthusiast, but again, I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe because you have the clear top on the block, they're thinking that you might put in a fluid that is colored or something like that to make it just that much more, I don't know, custom. But I mean, at least the option is there, and as long as you don't go messing with it and opening up plugs and stuff, you probably don't need to service this whatsoever. But they do obviously give you both the jumper to run the pump so that you can bleed the system, as well as additional fluid if you need to top it off for some reason. So anyway, guys, that's been my first look here at the Enermax LIQFUSION, obviously their RGB AIO cooler. I'm personally a fan of the older LIQTech coolers they used to have, which were much more simple. They were single, plugs for the pump. They had just a single LED in there, either a white or blue LED. Very robust, beefy, reliable, and didn't, have all these wires and stuff. One drawback to having all this RGB is the fact that you have a lot of wires coming off of this. 2 plugs per fan. Obviously, a plug for the block for the RGB, and then obviously you have your wire for your pump, which is now inline, which makes it more difficult to actually route these wires without being seen. Obviously, in an open test bench like this, they're pretty obvious. In a case, a little bit easier to hide, but it's something definitely worth talking about. So what do you guys think about the Enermax LIQFUSION? Let me know in the comments below, and if there's any other coolers you guys want me to check out as we move into the summertime, make sure you guys let me know by hitting me up either on Twitter or commenting down below. Again, a huge thank you to Enermax for sending us this cooler to take a look at. We're gonna get out of here, and as always, we'll see you guys in the next one.